Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Her Journey Told podcast. On this show, we will focus on strengthening women's mental fitness through sharing the joy, struggle, and wisdom of each woman's journey. Our show is powered by Pivotal Moments. Go to pivotalmoments.org to learn more. I'm your host, Sandy Lutton, and I'm privileged to have Jen Hampton here as our guest. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited for you to tell your story because I've told you this before, but I've been inspired by you for so many years. And I think it's just so cool, like where you've come from and like where you are today and how young you still are and all that you've accomplished in this small amount of time. So just for our audience's sake, Jen is the founder and creator of Spirited Treasure. You can go to spiritedtreasure.org and find her website, which is really full of great information and insight. You can also follow her on social media. But Jen is a woman of many titles, including mom and daughter and sister and, hairstylist, medium,
Yes.
intuitive. I mean, how many titles could we add? But most importantly, entrepreneur. You started your own company. You took your gift and took it to a whole other level and started your own company. So congratulations to you for
Thank
that.
you so much. Thank you.
And so I'll start with this. What is Spirited Treasure? And what inspired you to start your own company? And what did that look like for you? What was that journey?
That's a really great question because I feel like it's still unfolding, in this moment. So as of now, Spirited Treasure is my company that I created to kind of bring people back to their intuitiveness. I feel like we have kind of lost that gift, that sense. And so I wanted to, it actually started with me creating my own oracle deck, which is a way to get in touch with your intuition. But then I really wanted to help kind of create more of a community, people who are trying to figure out who they are, where they are in life, offer tools to help people along the way, and also comedy and humor, because let's be honest, if we don't have that in life, we're kind of up the creek, It can be like really doom and gloom. What inspired me? Oh, geez. A lot inspired me, I think. But the biggest part, I think, was a couple years ago, I said to my husband, something has to change. I feel like we are just going and living day to day and living the grind, and we're not experiencing life. We're just existing. And is this what it's all about? It left me with the question of, is this really what it's all about? Get up, go to work, don't spend time with your family, rush, 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 here, there. And I just was like, I just kept hearing for myself, slow down, slow down. And that was at like a scary time because I was right at the highest point, almost the highest point that I could get in my career being a hairstylist. I booked out for months. No one could get in. I was rarely seeing new clients. I was making good income, but I was left feeling lost and alone and just wiped out all the time. And so it just left me with this feeling like, is this really what it's about? So actually COVID hit and then everything started to really unfold. It gifted me with that time to really restructure my life the way that I wanted. And that's kind of how it all started. So I had been giving readings. I'm a medium, so I've been giving readings for probably the last 5 or 6 years, here and there with my clients. And then when COVID hit, I was like, I feel like people need guidance. I feel like people need to hear what the next step is for them and give them inspiration and motivation. And so I started doing readings, and it just kind of unlocked from there and just kept flowing and flowing. And now, I'm working hair 3 days a week, and I'm kind of watching this magical thing unfold in front of me, which is just It's just so great. It's just so amazing.
So you said that you said something had to give,
Something had
right?
to give.
And something had to change and you were tired. I'm pulling out some of the things you heard. And it sounds like to me, you were like, where's that fulfillment? I need that fulfillment in my life. And I know as a mother, it's hard because society will tell us we are supposed
Hmm.
to be fulfilled by being mothers, taking
Hmm.
care of our children, taking care
Mm.
of our families.
Yep.
But how did you take that leap to say, okay, I've got to fulfill myself and look at my own desires and make myself happy over and not choosing one over the other, but a lot of times it's that mommy guilt that we experience, right? And you're like,
Yep.
no, it's not my time, it's their time. So what was that thought? What was that narrative for you? What was that internal narrative?
Well, I think it was just that. I think it was the recognition of that it's not external fulfillment, right? I'm
Mm,
not going to find that fulfillment externally. So I think it was the recognition of going, oh my gosh, the fulfillment is actually coming in with me. What do
right.
I need to do, right? Not what does everyone else need to do? What does society need to do for me? It's about what changes do I need to make for myself? And it really took, some awareness, some space for me to actually step back and be like, okay, what do I need to do? What do I want? And these things were speaking to me, right? So I was letting go of what society was saying. That was really scary too, was like, if I'm going part-time for job with my job, I'm losing, the health insurance. I'm losing the
Right.
things that we are like, oh my God, what? You're crazy. Why would you do something like that? And I had to let go of the societal structures to really find myself. So I feel like it wasn't one moment, to be honest, Sandy. It wasn't one moment where it was just all clicked. I just had this clarity and this take the leap. I just had to
Mm,
take the leap. Um, and trust that everything was going to be okay. I feel like you kind of get to spaces in your life where you're up against a wall and you're like, something's got to change, but no one changes and you don't make any changes. And so you
right.
just keep going and going and going. Or you step back and go, okay, I'm being called to make changes that sound very scary but
Mm,
also leave me with such excitement. Like, what if all of this works out? What if this is everything that I dreamed of? What if this leads me to peace instead of? So you had to kind of step back and go, okay, if I keep going this way because I'm so scared, am I going to feel any better in 5 months, in 6 months, in a year if I make no changes?
mm.
Or do I make these changes and just see what happens and surrender? So I think you come to a space where you decide to just keep going, or you finally surrender to whatever may unfold for you without always trying to figure it out, which is another thing society tells us not to do, right? You
Right.
have to have a plan. You have to have everything all in place. Yeah, if you're starting a business, you need a business plan. You need this,
Yes.
this, and this. Oh, if you don't do this, this, and this, you won't survive. You won't make it. Oh, how could you do that? You're going to be a bad mom. Your energy. I mean, hello, we're moms. I mean, I'm sorry, but we have superpowers and we just forget.
That's right.
We feel like we have to do it all. And you know what? I'm sorry, I don't have to do it all. I'm Jen and I am living my life. And so I'm going to have moments where I mess up with my kids. I'm going to have moments where I mess up with my friends. I'm going to have moments where you come over and you're like, oh my God, did a bomb go off? And I'm like, no, this is just my life. So there's a constant unfoldment. I think you just get to the moment where you're like, I'm ready to take the jump. I'm just ready. And if you're not, then you just keep going. And then you
Right.
start to notice how that affects you, you know?
So it sounds like you're saying it's not one conscious decision or of making this huge change or taking this huge leap, but it's a process. It's a step by step,
It's a
little by
process.
little, and then things start. The more, and I think I've heard you say this too. The the more you move forward, the more things open up and more opportunities present themselves to you.
Yeah, once you start surrendering and once you really let go of a plan, because what we do so often is we chokehold something, you know? We're
Right.
like, "Oh God, it has to go this way, and if it doesn't unfold, it's all going to crumble." And you and I have talked about this before where there are going to be many times where you try something and most people look at it as a failure. If it starts to crumble, it's deemed as a failure. And I don't think we should look at anything as a failure because it's an unfoldment. You know, we're
Right.
getting to know who we are. We're getting to know what works. We're getting to know how to navigate this part. And that's the fun part. So instead of seeing it as a failure, you're looking at things as a stepping stone. You know, how can I get to my next place? Okay, that didn't work for me. So I'm ready to try something else. You know, and it's this process, I guess, of letting go. It's this process. And the reason I say process is because we are so conditioned to act and think a certain way.
Yes.
Everything has to, you know, again, we've talked about this like familial structures,
Hmm.
cultural structures, societal structures, even global structures. You know, we think things have to unfold a certain way for them to just be unlock and be beautiful. And the more, what I have noticed is the less you have a plan and you just kind of focus on that outcome, right? But letting go of all the minute details that you feel like you really have to have in place, it just
Right.
starts to unfold. And so I guess it's a process because we are letting go and shedding structures that had us in a lockhold of how we were supposed to do things. So when you have those missteps, you're kind of like letting go of old structures. You're like, oh my
Hmm.
gosh, this is an opportunity for me to realize like that was maybe a structure that I was trying to put in this space and it wasn't meant to be here.
Right.
Does that
So
make
two,
sense?
yeah, completely. And two thoughts that come out of that, and I've had the absolute, pleasure of knowing you for many, many years.
Yeah.
Like not all your life, but most of it,
Most of
right?
my life.
Right. So I also would say that one title some might give you is rebel, right?
Yes. My father deemed me as the black sheep of the family. I still
Right.
carry that strong.
And then you also talk about, just finally, so the reason why I've seen people call you a rebel is because you didn't necessarily take the route in which they felt you should be taken in life. And sometimes that was going to a college and getting a 4 year
Hmm.
degree, or it was you wanted to move somewhere and it's almost like their own fears said, no, you can't do that. Right. And so you've kind of put your foot down and said, no, I'm doing it. I've got to do it my way. And so I think it's important to think about that and talk a little bit about that. So you knew that you were being pulled to a certain direction, and everyone else is telling
Hmm.
you, no, 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 that's not the right direction, Jen. You will fail. That is not what you should be doing. You should be going over here. And I think a lot of it is, our that older generation, our parents' generation, they tell
Yep.
us, and even our grandparents' generation, they
Yep.
tell us your life needs to look a certain way. Like you just mentioned, the societal structures, and that's the direction you need to go. And it was hard for them to give you that support to go in your own direction. So how did that feel, and how did you handle that? And what did you learn from it?
Well, again, I feel like that's an unfoldment and a process in itself, too, you know? So, I mean, at the age of 14, oh my gosh, my dad and I were in such a heated argument. And, you know, 14 is right around that time. It was like 14 or 15, right? And my dad said to me, "Why would you put your hand on the burner if I'm telling you it's hot?" And I yelled and I said, because I need to know that it's hot for myself. I was basically stating, I have to be able to make mistakes. I have to be able to go through life my own way. And that's hard as a parent. Now, as a parent, I see what my
Mm,
parents were trying to do. And you often you want to protect your children from what you experienced. And we can't do that. We can't do that because we're denying them life experiences that are going to unlock who they are and let them grow. So I think that's really hard. But at the moment, at 15, I didn't know what the heck my dad was saying. I just was irritated that he just like didn't let me live my life. And I
right.
went through that. I went through that with a lot of, oh my gosh, I remember when I was in beauty school and we were actually, I was at my step grandfather's funeral. And
Mm.
I had one side was pink hair, one side was purple hair. And I'm like, why does this make people so uncomfortable? Like that, I'm just Jen. I'm Jen. Like, if you know me, you love me. And my grandmother would have to be like, this is my granddaughter. She's in beauty school. She's experimenting. She had to tell everybody, like, had to justify why I was in that space. So I was always kind of coming up against people who were like, you can't do this. Even now, when I talk to my dad about, what I'm doing and how things are unfolding, it goes right back to insurance and
Mm,
this and that and life insurance and are all your ducks in a row. And it's different and difficult because I am a nonconformist. I don't like living life the way other people tell you have to. Immediately it gives this guttural like, "Oh my God, why? Why can't I do it my own way?"
right.
Um so, we're talking like even down to the minute things or little things of like having my car clean. My dad would always be like, "Honey, your car is disastrous." And I would always say, why does it bother you? You're not driving it. Like, what? And I guess that's my question. We all do that, right? We all
Hmm.
have that, but step back and say, but why does it bother me so much? And I would
Right.
say that to my family. Why does the way I'm living my life, if it's making me happy, bother you so much? And I think because they just don't want to see me as a failure or see me fail. I don't take anything that I've gone through as a failure. I started at Penn State
Right.
University, which is in Pennsylvania. Could not figure out what I wanted to do. I was like,
Right.
I don't think this is for me. I moved out to California and went to school. And I was like, okay, I had the other epiphany. People would look at that and go, oh my gosh, you're crazy. You're all over the place. You can't figure it out. I took chances. I
Right.
took chances on myself. And I would say to my mom, because she said, yeah, but you're left with all this debt. And I said, you know what? Yes, but guess what? It's mine. It's mine. It's me.
Right.
It's for me to rectify. Um, so I think that's an unfoldment. I think that's a process because, I'm 35 now and I'm going through this process and this unfoldment and realizing when people say those things, it's usually because of the stories that they are carrying with them. Okay?
Yeah.
So, it's not about me. It's about whatever is affecting them and how it either triggers them or scares them because they see it a certain way.
Right.
Um, but through my whole life, I couldn't recognize that. It was like, like you said, I was stomping my feet to like be
Hmm.
recognized for me. And now I'm feeling like I don't have to be recognized. I just have to be me and realize if anyone is having a moment of like, oh, you're doing that wrong, or you probably should set it up this way, and it's not feeling right to me, then that's okay. And it's something that they're going through. It's something that's triggering
Right.
them. So I think it's still just this unfoldment. I think it's this process of
Yeah.
like watching your own path, knowing that it's okay for you to be you. It's safe for you to be you. It's okay for you to do things differently. Um, and I think that's just a process. I think it just kind of each experience that you have,
Mhm.
there's the light or the epiphany. There's that space to kind of learn from that situation. Um, did that answer the question? I feel
It
like,
did. No, it did. And it's interesting, even it made me reflect on even in my own life. I remember, I did go to the 4-year university and get my degree. And I
yeah,
remember my dad, I was telling him, so again, similar to your situation and having that conversation with dad. And I was talking to my dad and I said, yeah, he's like, well, what's your major? And I said, I'm going to be a marketing major. And he goes, why would you be a marketing
mm,
major? He said, you're going to end up working at McDonald's with all the other marketing majors. And I didn't understand that at the time as I was like, what are you talking about? But in his mind, he said, you need to become a teacher or a nurse. And so for him, it was about stability and security. Your dad always said, what about insurance? What about these things? And
which
I
is
think that's
that I
where
think
they
they
come
think
from.
that offers, yeah, stability and comfort. And meanwhile, all that stuff can be taken away,
For
you know.
sure. And I think that's part of the problem. It's great to have security. I know when you think about like what stresses you, finances can be a huge stressor. And you think if I just had money and those things, everything would be okay in my life. But then you see people with tons of money who are unhappy because they haven't found what fulfills them, what brings them meaning, what inspires them and drives them every day. And I think that's an important piece of it that people are starting to recognize now. And you talked about, now that, being in the pandemic really made you take a step back and look at your life and say, what do I need to change? What can I change? And I think it's given us all that opportunity.
Yeah,
And we're all in some sort of state of transition, right? And it can be
agreed.
hard. It can be scary, and you may not get that support that you're looking for. So it's really, I think, so important for us to be able to look internally,
Yes,
listen to what we're telling ourselves. And that's what you said. And I think it's so interesting, the title intuitive, right? And what does
hmm,
that mean? And you always say you got to help people unlock their own intuition. We all kind of have this gift, but we've shut it off, right? Or
we
we don't
have.
know how to unlock it. So talk a little more about that.
So, one thing I wanted to add to to something you said just a couple minutes ago was about the fulfillment. When you're going through that space of trying to make changes, right? We are a society that revolves around money, right? That
Yes.
dollar bill, right? And you have to stop and ask yourself, am I living life for the future or am I living life for the
Mm,
right now? And
right.
is the money bringing me happiness? That's a big conversation in my family with my children because I say to them, happiness equals success.
Ah, I
If
like
you're
that.
happy, you are successful. But that's not what society tells us. So we're all running for the dollar. We're all running, 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 go, 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 go. We're living for the next 20 years, but we're missing the present moment. And I
Hmm.
think that's what people are starting to realize, right? We're unlocking that. We're realizing, "Oh my God, I've been on a hamster wheel and I feel like I'm not fulfilled."
Right.
Intuitive. That is given to every single soul. We all have that intuitive sense,
Hmm.
every single one of us. I want to help people unlock it because it's a process. Your intuition makes you uncomfortable because it usually tells you to jump off the ledge. And you're like, oh my God, I'm 2,000 feet in the air. I don't want to jump off the ledge. And they're like, yeah, but something's going to catch you. And we're not going to tell you what it is, but just
Mm,
trust that you're going to be caught and everything's going to work out. So your intuition is this like uncomfortable guide that's like, listen, I'm telling you what to do in this moment. It's kind of like you see two paths and one looks really downtrodden, right? There's branches in it. It kind of looks gloomy. But if you go through that path, there's this amazing, mystical, beautiful waterfall. And there's only a couple people there. And you go to the other one, which has flowers along the path, but you never get to the waterfall. So you think it's oh, that's the path I'm supposed to take. It's beautiful. They're telling me I'm going to get to something. But the other path looks a little doom and gloom, but that's because you're unlocking who you are. You're letting go and shedding societal structures, your own stories that no longer serve you. And then you get to this waterfall and you realize that your intuition is the one that's getting you there. Just trust it. Just walk it. Hear me. Listen to me. And it's a process because we have been conditioned to live our lives a certain way. And it's a practice to let go of all of that and listen to something different. And I mean, I didn't do it right away. I've always had my intuition, right? Those were
Mhm.
the moments where I was stomping my feet. Listen to me.
Right.
I'm allowed to do this. But yet I wouldn't go full throttle. Now I feel like I'm in a space where it's like, hands are up. They tell it, I get this download of what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to just trust it.
Right.
So, can I give an example of that?
Yes, please do.
Okay. So, I had gone part-time last March. So
Mhm.
right when COVID hit, I called my boss, and that was when I had the epiphany of like something's got to give. Okay? Something's got to change, and it's got to be me. I need to do this. So I said I'm going part-time. We get back from lockdown and we're going. Meanwhile, we're also homeschooling, working. I'm still doing readings. I'm embarking on Spirited Treasure. And I'm like, holy crap, what's happening? So I get to another space where they're saying, you need to go more part time. You need to go
Mm.
more part time with hair. And my body was hurting. I was in
Mm.
so much pain from hair. And I knew that it was saying, this no longer is holding you up. This no longer is part of your integrity to this degree. So they're saying you need to go more part-time. And so when I say they, I mean like as an intuition, right?
Yeah.
So you're
Right.
you're receiving this information. So I finally went into my boss and I said, I'm going part-time. I'm not working Thursdays. I'm now only working 3 days a week. I I'm not waiting for a backup plan, and this is effective immediately. And my boss was like, okay, okay. I came home and I started crying because I said, how are we going to do this financially? I'm scared. And I just sat there and I said, okay, you told me to do this, and I'm listening. And I am going to trust that you have everything figured out for me.
Mm.
So whatever I need, you will supply. Okay. I'm letting go and I'm surrendering and I'm trusting that we will have this all figured out. The next day, my boss calls me and she said, hey, I want to talk to you about something. And I said, okay. And she said, I'm giving you a raise. And I said, what?
Wow.
I said, what now does that mean? I said, I still need to go part time. And she said, yep, you're still going part time. To me, that was the moment where they had it all figured out. They
Yeah.
knew I was going to be
Yeah.
supplied for. I had a bot. Once you let go, right? I mean, it was either that or my body was going to give out. And so to me, it wasn't worth my well being. So when I say let go and trust, I really mean let go and trust because things like that will start to happen. You get the momentum going in another direction. And so it's kind of becomes this whole unfoldment of
So,
listening to your intuition.
yeah, so I've heard you say this often, and this you just gave a great example of it, but I hear you say all the time, you've got to let go of what's not working for you.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
so interesting to me when you say that. I always think, okay, what's not working for me? And how do I identify that it's not working for me? So for you in that
Mm.
scenario, you talked about your body, you could feel it. You were having pain, like physical pain,
Yep.
and you knew that something had to give. And so you you had already kind of tapped into that. So in that, so what I heard from that story is once you let go, right, there was that fear, right? But you
Yeah.
faced the
Hmm.
fear by just trusting, and then like it all worked out. So you got to have peace with it.
Right. So the first step would be awareness.
Mm,
The first step, that's key, is awareness. So if we're unaware of our reactions to things, how are we going to know what we're really reacting to or how we're really reacting to something? So you have to feel it. You have to be able, so the
right.
awareness starts with, or I should say rather, the identifying starts with the awareness. So let's talk about something smaller, on a smaller scale. You hear your coworkers at work gossiping about another coworker. And they're like, I mean, don't you know what I'm talking about? Like, don't you think that? And they want you to chime in. How does that make your body feel? Are you feeling good after that conversation? Because your intuition is going to say, your intuition is usually going to guide you. I say
Right.
usually because your intuition is always for the highest good. It's always going to direct you in a way that's not going to leave you feeling downtrodden, tired, drained. So you have to pay attention to those conversations. Does that make you feel good talking about somebody else? Like you're all picking on someone? And if it does, then you've got to kind of recheck that and go, why? So you have to become aware of the tiny interactions, even to the big interactions. So
Mm,
you want to have the awareness before you start feeling physical pain.
right. Right.
you
Right.
know, I heard my intuition for a long time, but I was scared. That fear is what
Mhm.
kept me locked into it. And it wasn't until, and unfortunately, sometimes it does take us being pushed up against a wall, feeling like we have no other choice. But right? Either keep going and lose yourself or make a change for what you need, which is totally uncomfortable and scary because you have no idea what it looks like. So the idea is to not get to physical pain.
Right.
The idea is to become aware of those interactions where you're kind of like, ooh, I don't, ooh, that's not making me feel very good. Or like, let's say you have a friend who you love so much, but they're kind of toxic. They leave you feeling drained and empty.
Mm,
Your intuition is probably saying, it doesn't mean that you can't love that person or send them love, but it's also they're going to guide you to find something else to lift you up, to kind of create a barrier or a boundary and say, I'm sending you love, but you've got to figure that one out. It's not my job to figure that out for you. I can't be your therapist, right?
right.
So you're kind of becoming aware of how you are feeling in a situation. So when you have to let something go, I mean, let's talk about this. How have you become aware of something that you've had to let go in your life, Sandy?
That's a great
You
question.
know, like,
Well, I mean, I think it does come down to oftentimes what you just said, there are people in your life. So, well, I have a big one, really. I was in a job where I was driven
yeah,
by the money, and I got to do and travel to some amazing places and do, just some really cool things that actually did bring me joy. Like I enjoyed it very much. However, it got to a point where the toxicity of that environment and
mm,
the company's push to continue to make more money started to override the joy I was receiving from that, and then it
mhm,
became more of a burden. But I had to look back on it and go, yes, but this provides insurance for my family. This is
right.
how we take care, I
It
bringing
keeps you
home the,
locked in.
yeah, I felt locked in.
Mhm,
I definitely felt locked in. And not only that, but I couldn't see a way out. I was blind to a lot of the opportunities that were being presented to me, and I would kind of just deflect and say, "No, I'm not interested. I'm fine here." But when I finally left that job, I was in such a state, physical,
Mm.
unhealthy state. I had gone to a chiropractor and she was like, "Oh my God, you are so tense." Every muscle in my back, I was feeling like tension and muscle spasms. I was having migraines on a regular, consistent basis. I just felt tired and I felt like I can't continue to do this. And so I was not only that was physically because of
That
that
was the
environment,
physical. Hmm.
like physically struggling, but I also felt I had neglected my family. I had neglected myself. I had sacrificed so much so that I could go this direction that I thought was really fulfilling, and only to find out later it wasn't. And it took me to get, like you said, to that physical place of some, like, I can't physically do this anymore. I've, never really been a person that was sick or had illness or health issues, but suddenly I was this person who couldn't hardly work out because I was in so much pain constantly. And it took me a long time, like a
Yeah.
good year, to physically get in a better state. And I remember, like, just working really hard to build my immune system back up. And this was all the physical stuff. So at the same time, I was also going through all the mental aspects of it.
Yep.
And, a lot from that, I figured out, like, I started to see that, number one, I can't go back to that environment. I don't want to live in that world ever again. So that drove me to, well, I've got to figure out a different route. What does that look like for me? And so I started doing consulting work for people, and I
Yep.
loved the flexibility in that. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to start my own consulting company. So it drove me to start my own company. But it also, I mean, it's like you said, it was such a process, and it has been a journey and still is to this day. I still am looking at, who am I? How can I be true to myself? And what is it that I want? What makes me happy and what gives me that fulfillment? And it is something I ask myself constantly, is this still working for me? And
So,
there's so much in my life that I've realized, like, I've unloaded a lot of that, but I still
mhm.
have a lot of it too. Go ahead.
Well, I think that's really interesting, just the way that you talked about that. You can see the unfoldment.
Hmm.
You can see that it was a process. Here's the thing. It's going to be a process for the rest of your existence on Earth. Again, another societal structure that we have in place is to find something and stick with it, right?
Right.
So
Great
who
point.
am I? I had this conversation with my son, who's 7, and actually he was 6 at the time, and I was talking about spirited treasure and kind of moving into that space, and he said, "Mommy, you can't do that. You're a hairstylist." And I said, "Honey, I am a hairstylist, but that's not my identity. That's not who I have to be for the rest of my life." I said, "Life is about taking chances on yourself. Life is about exploring who you are." And why I say that is because I'm not the Jen who was the 15-year-old Jen. You are not the
Right.
Sandy that was the 12-year-old Sandy or even the 20-year-old Sandy. It's
Right.
an unfoldment. So your intuition is there where you're in this space, right? You're in a different space. You're looking at your life currently and you're saying, "What are my intentions here? What do I really want from this experience?" And sometimes your intuition is going to guide you and they're like, "Beeline it." Head
Right.
this way.
Yeah.
We're now leaving, we're detouring. And that's going to feel really scary because we are so conditioned to think that once we're in something, we've got to stick it out for the long haul. We're here
Right.
to experience. We're here to be creative. We're here to constantly evolve and grow. We are not here to, and now if that works for some people and they feel fulfilled, then that's good
Hmm.
for them. But that
Right.
doesn't mean that that is every single person's path. and that's what it should look like. And unfortunately, we've gotten into that habit. We see it with our kids in school. If they, they expect all circles, and we've got squares and triangles and stars, and they're trying to make them all be circles. And that's really
Right.
difficult. That's really, really difficult. So they're even learning at a young age, well, I've got to conform to be successful. And that's a lie.
Hmm.
That's hogwash.
Right.
When we
Right.
listen to our intuition, we are really expanding our awareness and our consciousness to know that everything's supplied. You said something earlier about how, you can be really rich and really successful and still be miserable. And you have to
Yeah.
identify what that mental state is. What are you telling yourself? Are you always thinking that you're in lack?
Yes.
I got to work, 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 work because I'll never have enough. I'm never going to have enough. I never have enough. Well, that becomes your experience. That
So
becomes your
what do
reality.
you tell yourself? Instead of saying those things, what do you tell yourself?
Okay, so this is a big one for me. And this has really kind of changed. And when I say a practice, it's a practice. Okay. So it's
Okay.
really, we are learning to, uh, we're learning a new practice. We are unconditioning ourselves. Okay. Or reconditioning ourselves to something new. So if something like lately, I've been trying not to complain, right? If I'm complaining, I'm putting that vibration out there. Everything works on a vibration and frequency. Okay. Our
Right.
thoughts do, our words do, our bodies are only look like they're solid because they're vibrating so fast it looks like solid form. That's mind blowing. Okay. So
Right.
everything has a frequency and vibration, which then gives you your reality. So I'll take the feeling. Maybe I'm like, oh gosh, why do I feel like this today? I just don't feel that great today. So I take the emotion and I go, why do I feel so good? Why am I waking up re energized? Why do I have so much energy? So I'm taking the emotion of feeling not that way, but I'm thinking and I'm saying something different. So then that's what my reality becomes. You would not believe the amount of power that that gives you. You would not believe. So our thoughts, they're like mentations. They just are like tick,
Hmm.
tick, 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 tick. You have to catch them. You have to go, what am I thinking here? What am I telling myself? In a situation where like lack, let's say like, are you thinking you're only, I learned this the other day in a class that I was taking, and he taught, Michael Beckwith is his name, and he talks about, are you thinking about spending money, or are you thinking about circulating money?
Mm.
Spending makes you feel like once it's gone, you're never going to see it again. Circulating is thinking, I spend it and I receive twice the amount.
Oh,
You know,
I
you're
love that thought.
circulating. You're circulating. So you're buying this and you're helping, let's say, Target pay their employees, which then the employees are able to put their children through school or buy their groceries. So if you're thinking of it in a different way, it totally changes the reality. It changes your reality. So I say, start small. Start with asking yourself, what if everything's working out for me? What if everything is
Hmm.
unfolding the way that it should? Start putting out a different vibration. Start putting out something else. So the minute that you want to ask yourself, why is this happening? Why does everything fall apart for me? You then realize where your thought processes. You're kind of taking into consideration and realization, oh my gosh, I actually really like, my thought is lack. My belief is
Ah,
lack, like I'm
yes.
never going to have enough money, or, um, you know, with the health insurance, you can say, why are my finances so abundant? Why is my
Hmm.
bank account so full that I can pay all of my bills on time and pay them ahead of time and pay for everything that I need? Everything that I need. My worth matches my needs,
Mm.
right? So, it's that simple. We just think that it's not. There's so much science out there now saying when you change your perception, you change your reality. We have science now to prove that. So
Right.
it's very interesting to be able to catch yourself and what you're telling yourself and what you're actually thinking about yourself and your reality, and changing that. So I think it's asking different questions, asking yourself different questions. Why is
So,
everything working out for me?
right. So one thing I have to do sometimes is I'll catch myself going down this path. So if
Hmm.
I have a challenge or a problem, I immediately jump into solution mode, right? I'm
Yes.
immediately thinking, how am I going to fix this? What am I going to do? And it can become all consuming for me.
Yes.
And I have to like sometimes
I'm like
just
that.
stop and say out loud. I've gotten to the point where I have to say it out loud. Sandy, what are you doing? Why
Hmm.
are you thinking this? And it's taken me a really long time to get to even to the practice of stopping myself. And but
Yes.
and it requires me to say it out loud to really like for it to click and like, all right, you cannot go down this path of thinking this way because it will take you down a negative path and it will not solve your problems. But if I start to tell myself, wait, don't think like this, and start to change that internal narrative, I find that I can relax. I get a
Yeah.
sense of peace. It is all going to work out. It always seems to work out, and so what's your advice? I mean, that for me, that's one way of saying it. I have to like out loud say, talk to myself. So what are some other things people can do as a practice to kind of help change that narrative and turn it around?
That, basically awareness,
Mm-hmm.
catching yourself, right? Becoming aware of what that action is. And I like to call that when we get into like OCD mode, right? That's when we're like, oh my God, I've got to do
Mhm.
this. And you're creating so much resistance, right? You're not letting it just flow. And then it's almost like it becomes harder, right? Have you
Right.
noticed that where you're like you're trying to figure everything out and then you can't think clearly and everything is all a mess and you can't get a hold of the people you need to get a hold of? And so awareness is key, and then self-talk, right? Okay, step back, surrender. What really needs
Ah,
done right now? And I think that's the biggest key. What really needs done in this moment? Is
right.
it critical? Is this critical right now? And if it's not critical, there might be some circumstances where it is critical. But what absolutely needs done and what doesn't need done? So I
Right.
think make a list. If you're feeling
Mhm.
condensed with like, oh, I've got to do this, this, and this, what's critical? What can wait? What's gonna float, what's gonna sink, right?
Right.
Are these things over here gonna be able to like float for a little bit, like your laundry and maybe cleaning the kitchen and the kids' rooms, right? Because I don't know about you, but once you get manic about something, you get manic about everything. It's like, oh my God, and I have to mop the floors and wipe all the screen windows down. It's like you get totally manic and then you
Yeah.
spiral. So just by, awareness is key, self-talk is key. If you're at that space where you can tell yourself like, okay, stop, walk away, gain some clarity, that's great. If you're not there yet, make a list. What's critical, what's not critical. That's another one. Walking away is key. Giving it like go outside, meditate
Mhm.
for a moment,
Mhm.
ground yourself in some way. If meditation sounds very scary for a lot of people, oh, I can't do that.
Mhm.
I can't do that. Okay, go listen to music. Go listen to something that's going to calm you down or make you happy.
Right.
Um, once we condense and we're stressed and our your shoulders are up to our ears, it's really hard for things to just kind of flow. There is no flow. It's just like bumping into these walls and these barriers and nothing goes as to plan. And just like this morning when we were trying to get this all working, like if we all would have been like, oh my God, we would have we've got it figured out. We got it
Right.
all figured out.
Yeah.
There was a little more flow to it. So I think those are probably the biggest is the awareness, trying to catch yourself first, right? Because you might be mid spiral and catch yourself. If you're mid spiral, it's a little bit harder to get yourself back. It just takes a little bit more. So instead of a 5 minute, like listening to music, you might need 20 minutes.
Right.
So awareness, making lists of what can sink or, what's going to sink, what's going to float. And then giving yourself some clarity, like letting yourself have that space to gain clarity of what needs done in that moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's super powerful. And I would say that's probably a good place for us to kind of wrap up today. But I
Yes.
feel like we've only scratched the surface. So I'm
Yes.
envisioning a part two coming. So
Okay, yay!
So,
I
Jen,
love it.
thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom. And for our audience, if anyone's looking for more of that insight and wisdom, go to spiritedtreasure.com. Jen's on social media, Instagram. Check out some of her Instagram live. I listened to some this weekend and I was like, wow, this is such good stuff. And I was like, I got to write this down. Of course, I was driving, so I couldn't write it down. So I'll have to go back and do
Yeah,
that.
don't do
But
that.
it was really powerful and insightful. So thank you for sharing with us today. This
Absolutely.
has been really fun. So
I've
we
loved
definitely have
it.
to do this again.
I would
And
love that.
for our audience, you've been listening to the Her Journey podcast, which is brought to you by Pivotal Moments. And if you want to learn more about Pivotal Moments, go to www.pivotalmoments.org and check out more of our content and feel free to donate as well. Thank you. You've been listening to the Her Journey Told podcast, powered by Pivotal Moments. For more inspirational content, go to pivotalmoments.org. I'm Sandy Lutton. Thanks so much for joining us. Make sure to keep an eye out for more episodes where podcasts can be heard. See you next time.